Silver crushed it in 2025, more than 100% increase. Is it over? Let's talk about what drove the year 2025 for silver, and let's also address what is the outlook. Silver right now is poised, and it's very well positioned to be the next generational critical metal. Right now, we're at an inflection point because we have three types of buyers that are not only interested in exposure in silver, but they actually need the physical. Let's identify those three types of buyers. Number one, the industrial usage of silver. Number two, governments. Not only the US, we have silver labeled as critical metal. And third, you got investors that actually want the product outright as opposed to just price exposure. Now let's identify what makes silver this unique capability. Silver is indispensable and is required part of the industrial and the government usages. The unique property of silver is that it's the highest electrical conductivity in comparison to other metals. This enhances energy conversion in solar, data processing in this data centers and artificial intelligence, and battery storage in electric vehicles. So when you understand the components, all this requires physical silver, not just price exposure. So let's understand what happened in 2025. During Liberation Day, silver dropped roughly around $30. And right now, as of this recording, silver is at about $66, more than double performance. What occurred? More buyers than the available supply. But to understand this, let's go back a few years. If you visit silverinstitute.org, you're going to get a lot more data about the supply and silver demand. What we've noticed in the last 5 consecutive years, we've had a structural deficit. To put it in simple layman terms, demand was more than the available supply. Let's break down the numbers to help you visualize what's been happening on silver. We typically consume, or the demand is about 1.2 billion ounces. The available supply is roughly about 1 billion ounces, 850 million being mined, and about 10 to 15% that is being recycled and repurposed. So in other words, you have about 200 million ounces of a deficit, roughly 20% for ease of numbers. So if you look at the last 5 consecutive years, you can make the argument that essentially we have a full year of lack of supply. So why did it take silver this much to all of a sudden start increasing in value? See, when governments label silver as a critical metal, silver is used in the military weaponry complex. But when silver is used in that capacity, it is simply consumed. Think about it. When you place silver in a weapon, in a bomb, and that bomb is utilized, you cannot go out and recycle and repurpose that silver. What's been happening with silver is that the recycling percentage in the last few years has also been dropping because it's not economical yet to recycle and repurpose silver when it's used in solar panels and electric vehicles, which, by the way, if you go back to 2011, that area represented less than 2% of the annual usage. Fast forward today, according to the Silver Institute, we're looking at about almost 30% of demand that is coming from this type of utilization that requires physical usage and that is very difficult to recycle. In other words, that growing demand in and itself is placing pressure on the future supply. In comparison to gold, roughly 20% of gold, the supply side of it, gets back from remelting, recycling, repurposing, specifically from the jewelry sector. So now, if you think about why silver is in such a demand, you realize that the data centers were spending trillions of dollars on AI, okay? And you have this convoluted companies between NVIDIA, the Google, Meta, OpenAI, and AMD. All these companies are intertwined with this large trillions of dollars investments. Layer that the government is also involved in making sure that the US wins this AI war against China. So you have such a big investment, but all of that requires power. See, here's an interesting fact. Google searches require 10 times less power than a OpenAI ChatGPT search. So if you understand the direction that we're heading and all this investment that's being done, and really think about the infrastructure, the foundation of power that's required, you see that silver is going to play a critical role. So when I mentioned that we're at an inflection point where you have on one side, government really needs it for its security purposes. And by the way, they don't really disclose how much they get, but we know that whatever they get, they do utilize it for the military weaponry complex. Essentially, we're at an inflection point. You have the government that is buying large quantity, does not disclose how much it buys for national security purposes, but we know whatever the government buys, that is taken off the supply, and it's going to be very difficult for it to be recycled and put back into supply. Second, you have the industrial usage. So within industrial usage, I want you to think about the three major buyers. One, solar panels. Second, electric vehicles. And third, these data centers. So this is the part of the evolution of technology where demand is consumer driven. It's not a green energy hype that we've had in the past about other asset classes, but this is a very strong demand that supply has been constrained. Then you have investors. If you look at the exchanges from the London bullion market to the CME of what's been happening, a lot of strategic investors are A, wanting to take possession, B, large nations have patronized their silvers. For instance, India took all of its silver out of the London bullion market and has it in its own control and custody. Once you understand the industrial dynamic and you realize that because silver is indispensable and you understand that there is an imbalance between demand and available supply, the only thing that has to give is price.